I'm also pastor of Saltmakers Church, and I apologize for the two previous attempts to go live. There were some technical issues, but I believe we got it all straightened out now. Thank you for tuning in. The third time's the charm. I think that's what they say. But anyway, thank you for tuning in, because the topic that I want to talk to you about for a few minutes this evening is critical. It is very, very, very important. We have got to fight voter suppression and voter disenfranchisement that the GOP is putting forth with all of its efforts. We must resist it. We owe it to our ancestors, and we owe it to our descendants. And I'm speaking of the ancestors that slaved in the fields, who were enslaved. I'm talking about our ancestors such as Dr. King, Reverend Dr. Ralph Abernathy, C.T. Vivian, John Lewis, and many others who have gone on now to the other side. Those men and women gave their lives, their sweat, their blood for our right to vote. And our descendants are depending on us to fight for them so that they can also enjoy the franchise. We've got to fight this. We must fight this with all of our efforts, because we don't want to live in a country where our voices and votes are not being heard because we didn't stand up and fight again like the ancestors did, like the civil rights movement did. We didn't stand up and fight. We're going to fight. And so what I want to do tonight is I want to lay out give you some information that will help you, that will inform you and equip you in this fight. I feel that's my responsibility. I feel it's my responsibility because the Lord has given me the ability to acquire some education in this space, some training and knowledge in this space, in this legal space. And all of this has to do with the legal arena. And so the Bible says, to whom much is given, much is required. And so I feel like it's my responsibility to take the law, bring it to you in a simple and easy to understand format, just like I do the Word of God. You see, I'm one of those believers who believe that we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I believe we can do both. I believe that we can definitely focus on our burning as believers, but also focus on learning. I believe we can be about righteousness and justice. The throne of God is established upon both. So I don't want it to be said of me that my focus is just exclusively on the eternal, on the eternal, while neglecting the natural. We're not in heaven yet. We're still in this rotten, stinking world. And we've got to be as plugged into this world as we are to get to heaven. Now, thank God when we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that's going to be. We're not going to have to be concerned about voting and none of the rest of this stuff here on earth. But until then, we must be engaged. We got to fight. Scripture says to be wise as servants and harmless as doves. So we gotta do this. The title of this Facebook Live is Why We Must Fight GOP-Led Voter Suppression and Disenfranchisement. And I want to just kind of go through this and lay this out for you. Let's start with the 15th Amendment. The 15th Amendment was ratified on February 3rd, 1870. It was the last of the three, what's often called the slave amendments, the Reconstruction Amendments, okay? 13th Amendment abolished slavery, 14th Amendment gave us citizenship, due process, and equal protection rights. 15th Amendment purportedly protects our right to vote. But that's kind of the problem. The 15th Amendment had no teeth. And so from 1870 until 1965, the whites did everything it could to keep us from voting, primarily those in the South. So once slavery ended, 15th Amendment was ratified, 1870. We had the right to vote, but oftentimes we couldn't vote. They fought tooth and nail to keep us from casting our votes. And it wasn't again until 1965 when the Voting Rights Act was enacted that the 15th Amendment had some teeth to it. But up from 1870 to 1965, there were all types of voter suppression measures, efforts. There were, for example, poll taxes. We had to pay a tax to vote. There were literacy tests, had to pass certain tests to vote. You shouldn't have to pass a test or pay any taxes to exercise the franchise. That's what the 15th Amendment, that's specifically what it says. Our right to vote should not be abridged with literacy tests, poll taxes. They would ask our forefathers to count how many jelly beans were in a jar, all that kind of crazy foolishness in order for us to get the right to exercise our right to vote. Well, now I want to take the time to play a little video. I got several videos that I want to play so that I can connect what I'm saying to you with what occurred in the past, because I need you to see that is connected, okay? If we know what has happened in history, someone said we won't let it, we won't repeat it, right? So we need to know where we've been in order to know where we're trying to get, where we're trying to go. So let me play this video for you. This is a clip, just a short, maybe about a minute or so clip on Reverend C.T. Vivian. Reverend C.T. Vivian, and him leading a group of African Americans who were trying to register to vote. And I want you to see what they went through.
Wrong, why don't you arrest us? We're willing to be beaten for democracy, and you misuse democracy in the street. Is what I'm saying true? Yes. Is it what you think and what you believe?
Yes. On February 15th, 1965, civil rights leader C.T. Vivian led a group of 40 marchers to the Dallas County Courthouse in Selma, Alabama.
With that light, we're not move back.
But then he was telling the guys to turn out the lights. And when they turned out the lights, that's when he hit me. But the important thing there was that I got up.
If we're wrong, why don't you arrest us?
Why don't you get out in front of the camera and go on?
It's not a matter of being in front of the camera. It's a matter of facing your sheriff and facing your judge. We're willing to be. And you misuse democracy in the street.
Reverend Vivian, as you see, was punched in the nose. He simply tried to register to vote, and as he led other people in registering to vote. So that is the sort of mayhem that we had to deal with as we tried to exercise our right to vote. But Dr. Vivian, Dr. King, Reverend Joe Lowry, Dr. Lowry, Andrew Young, Reverend Jesse Jackson, and many others gallantly and courageously fought the battle for us to be able to vote. But it was a hard-fought battle. Many African Americans were killed. Medgar Evers was killed. Cheney, Swerner, and Goodman were killed. The 4 little girls in the Birmingham church were murdered, and countless others were lynched as African Americans did everything they could to try to vote and register to vote. Now, many others, again, were, terrorized. I think of the late Representative John Lewis. I think about, again, Reverend C.T. Vivian. In fact, I want to show you another video. So I wanted you to see from these videos some of the violence that our forefathers endured so that we would have the right to vote. The late Representative John Lewis was hit upside the head with a billy club. He required a bunch of stitches. I mean, he could have lost his life out there that day, and many others were injured. Again, so that you and I could go to the polls and cast our votes. Now, after all him, for 100 years, from 1870 to 1965, finally, the Voting Rights Act was enacted and signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson. And that really helped us in our voting efforts. However, the GOP still mounted a fight against our ability to vote, even after the enactment of the Voting Rights Act. Now, I want to play you another clip, a video clip here of a man named Paul Weyrich. Paul Weyrich was a GOP thinker. He was one of these folks who they looked to help them figure out how to support and protect white supremacy. And what he says is very telling, and it's the reason why we continue to fight this voter suppression, their voter suppression efforts right now. I want you to listen very carefully to Paul Weyrich.
Now, many of our Christians have what I call the goo-goo syndrome, good government. They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down.
So there you have it. Paul Weyrich told the GOP years ago when Ronald Reagan was in office and Jerry Falwell led the moral majority, he said that they don't want a lot of people voting. That is not good for them. They know they cannot win elections when lots of people vote. Their method of winning elections is by suppressing votes. That is their game plan. That is what they think helps them win elections. What they don't do is they don't get out here and try to get folks to vote for them by doing the right thing by African Americans. No, they try to suppress African American votes. And they've been doing it for a long, long, long time. And they have not stopped doing it. Even with the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, they have not stopped. They've never stopped. And so now let's talk about what's going on. So in 2013, I believe it was, the U.S. Supreme Court heard a case called Shelby County versus Holder. Shelby County versus Eric Holder, who was the Attorney General at that time. So basically, Shelby County, Alabama, sued the Attorney General, Eric Holder, and basically argued that sections of the Voting Rights Act were unconstitutional and they should be struck down. The Voting Rights Act required certain southern states to get pre-approval from the Justice Department before they made any changes to their voting laws. And that was designed to protect African Americans from stuff like poll taxes, literacy tests, racial gerrymandering, all of that. So before they could make any changes to their laws, they had to first get approval from the Justice Department. Well, Shelby County, Alabama, sued the Justice Department and basically said that this was outdated, that blacks were no longer in a situation where they would suffer voter suppression. And this was after Barack Obama had been reelected. And so the court, the U.S. Supreme Court, was convinced by that argument. The Chief Justice, John Roberts, who wrote the opinion, said in his opinion that there was no need really for the Voting Rights Act because, again, blacks had risen to the point now that they were able to elect a black person and even get that person reelected. So there was no need to stop southern states from changing their voting laws. And so key sections of the Voting Rights Act were struck down by this case, Shelby County versus Holder, sections 4 and section 5, okay? Section 4, section 5, and those two sections dealt with what formulas were used to determine what states were subject to the Voting Rights Act. So section 4 and 5 were sort of gutted. Now, section 2 of the Voting Rights Act was left in place. And under section 2, folks could still bring lawsuits if they felt like a state or a local municipality, a city, or what have you, were violating the Voting Rights Act. So they still could sue under section 2, but we had lost the protection of the pre-clearance requirement, where again, certain states that had a history of all of these poll taxes and all of that had to get pre-approval. That was gutted, but lawsuits could still come under section 2. Well, let me inform you that today, what is this, March 2nd, 2021, today, the U.S. Supreme Court heard two cases on section 2. So now they're literally trying to gut section 2. That would completely gut the Voting Rights Act if section 2 is gone. Section 4 and 5 required the preclearance. Section 2 enabled African Americans to bring lawsuits if they felt like they were being discriminated against in terms of voting. But now the court just today heard a case having to do with section 2. And there's a very good chance that Section 2 will be gutted. Why? Because 2013, the court was a 5-4 majority conservative. Today it's 6-3. And the person who wrote the majority opinion in Shelby County, again, was John Roberts, Chief Justice John Roberts. So he has been trying to get rid of the Voting Rights Act all his career. He started out in the Reagan administration as a young lawyer working with, I think, William Rehnquist, who was the Chief Justice back at that time, on how to defeat and undermine the Voting Rights Act. So no doubt, this has been his career goal. There's no doubt with the opportunity today to get rid of Section 2 that he will take advantage of that opportunity. So I fully expect that the Voting Rights Act will be pretty much gutted from top to bottom by the summer of 2021. When they hear a case in the March and during this term, they usually announce the opinion in June, July. So I fully expect come June or July, the Voting Rights Act will be completely gutted. And then we won't have any kind of protection. That's how serious this is. They will be able to do whatever they want to do in terms of voter suppression and disenfranchisement. It's that serious, literally that serious. But all hope is not gone. All hope is not gone because the Congress right now is in the hands of people who want to see the Voting Rights Act protected, restored. Okay? Now, just to show you, though, that these folks mean business, when Shelby County versus Holder was handed down, the very next day, states like Texas, North Carolina, and other states immediately implemented voter suppression laws. And they have been in place ever since. So now they've gotten chance to get Section 2 in front of the court. And as I just explained, they're going to take advantage of that chance. Now, where are we at right now? Well, we just had the 2020 election. And that was really, that set fire under the GOP. Several red states were turned blue. Senators were elected, Democrat senators were elected, who in states that hadn't seen Democratic senators in 30 years or so. And Joe Biden won the presidency despite all of the voter suppression efforts that the GOP implemented. So now they have a full head of steam to do more voter suppression. And that is exactly what they're doing. So keep in mind, Section 2 will be gutted. All right? They're also working in state houses to suppress our votes, to disenfranchise us. Let me show you a map. This map right here shows the states that have already, since Trump lost, have already been implementing voter suppression laws. These states right here, I live in one of these states, and they are doing everything they can. There are 33 of these states, and they have thus far, they have introduced 165 restrictive bills. 165 restrictive bills. Okay, I read somewhere where it was actually around 265 restrictive bills. I'm getting different information, but this comes from the Brennan Center. But whether it's 100 and sorry, it looks like the stream keeps cutting off. I'm telling you, there are forces that don't want you to hear this. But I'm persisting. I'm persisting to keep doing this. This is that important. But what I was saying is they are trying to disenfranchise us on the federal level and on the state level. We can't let them do it. I showed you a map before the stream stopped where 35 states have introduced somewhere around 165 to 265 very restrictive laws. And I mean, they are intending to restrict our votes in terms of early voting, of mail-in voting, purging voter rolls, slashing voter registration opportunities, stricter voter ID laws. All of that type of stuff is circulating right now in about 30-something states in America. We cannot sit silent and let them do this. Now, what can we do? I apologize. This stream just keeps stopping. I sincerely apologize, but again, I'm soldiering on. When it stopped, I was saying to you what can be done. Congress needs to act. That's what needs to be done. Congress needs to act. Congress, the House and the Senate. There are two bills that are circulating through Congress as I speak, and they need to be signed into law immediately. One is H.R. 1. It has been signed into law. It has been introduced into Congress. The Senate version of it is S1. It's called the For the People Act, and it will address a lot of the voter suppression stuff that I'm talking about now. H.R. 1 and S1, For the People Act. What it does specifically is it expands access to the ballot box by fighting all of the barriers to voting it also creates automatic voter registration across the country. I sincerely apologize. This just keeps breaking. I don't know why it's doing that, but then I started thinking that maybe for the good, because it's not an hour long. The sections are 10 or 15 minutes long, and so maybe that's good. But anyway, I'm going to keep going through this because it's so good. Remember, H.R. 1, S1, H.R. 1, S1, H.R. 1, and S1, For the People Act, H.R. 1, S1. Congress needs to enact those laws yesterday. H.R. 1, S1. That could stop a whole lot of the stuff we see happening in these states. And H.R. 4, okay, that is critical too. H.R. 1 deals with a lot of the voter suppression stuff that we see these states doing. The H.R. 4 will restore this notion that states must get pre-approval before they implement a lot of these voter suppression laws. So both of these two laws or bills are very important. H.R. 1, S1, H.R. 4, and I'm kind of rushing now before this thing cuts off again. But that's what I want you to remember. H.R. 1, S1, H.R. 4, all right? We need Congress to sign these bills into law immediately. Immediately. Don't wait 6 months. Get this done right now. Okay? And I mean immediately. Now, what can we do? What can we do? We got to organize, folks. We got to organize. We got to bring our strength together. When we organize and unite, we have power. We make things happen. We just saw that. We saw that in 2000. We saw that in 2012. We got the first black man in office. And in 2020, we got the first black woman in office. All because We united. We united. Okay? So what must we do? We got to organize. We got to unite. Number one, we must organize. We must unite. There is strength when we come together. We make things happen. We got Raphael Warnock elected. Okay?